Violet Hayes stood in the rain outside the Sterling Technologies building, her umbrella doing little to protect her from the downpour that seemed to match the storm inside her heart. 3 months had passed since Rebecca's funeral, 3 months since she had lost the person who understood her better than anyone in the world. The grief still felt fresh, raw, like an open wound that refused to heal. She had received the message that morning from Damian Sterling himself, requesting her presence at his office. Violet had only seen him from afar at the funeral, a tall figure in black, his face carved from stone, eyes hollow with a pain that mirrored her own. He had lost his daughter, his only child, and Violet could not imagine surviving such devastation. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. When the doors opened, a professional assistant guided her through corridors of glass and steel till they reached an office that overlooked the entire city. Damian stood by the window, hands in his pockets, his silhouette commanding even in stillness. "Miss Hayes," he said, without turning. His voice was deep, controlled, carrying the weight of unspoken grief. "Thank you for coming." Violet stepped inside, her heart pounding. "Mr. Sterling, I received your message. How can I help you?" He turned then, and Violet felt her breath catch. She had forgotten how striking he was. Dark hair with distinguished silver threading through it, sharp features that spoke of determination and intelligence, and those eyes, gray like storm clouds, that seemed to see straight through her. "Please, sit down." He gestured to the leather chairs arranged near his desk. "Can I offer you anything to drink?" "No, thank you," Violet managed, settling into the chair and trying to ignore how her hands trembled slightly. Damian sat across from her, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "Rebecca spoke about you constantly. You were the sister she never had, the person who made her laugh when nothing else could." Tears pricked Violet's eyes. "She was my best friend. Losing her has been the hardest thing I have ever experienced." "Then we share that pain," Damian said quietly. He leaned forward, his expression intense. "Miss Hayes, Violet, I am going to be direct with you, because I believe that is what you deserve. My company is under attack. 3 weeks ago, a tabloid published a series of articles alleging improprieties in my business dealings, suggesting corruption within Sterling Technologies, and making claims about my personal life that are entirely false." Violet listened, confused about why he was telling her this. "The board is nervous. Investors are pulling back. My reputation, which I have spent 2 decades building, is being destroyed by lies and speculation." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I need to demonstrate stability. I need to show the world that I am not the reckless, immoral person these articles suggest. I still do not understand what this has to do with me," Violet said softly. Damian stood and walked to the window again, his back to her. "I need a wife. Not a real marriage, not initially. A business arrangement that would last 2 years. We would appear together at public events, present a united front, show the world a stable, respectable relationship." Violet felt the world tilt. "You want me to marry you?" "In name only," he said quickly, turning to face her. "You would have your own living space. There would be no expectations beyond public appearances. After 2 years, we would divorce quietly, and you would receive $3 million for your time and discretion." The number was staggering, enough to change her entire life. But Violet shook her head. "Mr. Sterling, I appreciate the offer, but I cannot possibly accept. This is too much, too complicated." "There is more," Damian said, his voice taking on a different quality. "Sterling Technologies has a charitable foundation. If you agree to this arrangement, I will personally fund a complete transformation of the public library where you work. New facilities, expanded programs, technology upgrades, everything you have ever dreamed of for that space." Violet's heart clenched. The library was her sanctuary, her calling, and Damian continued, his voice softening, "We would establish a permanent scholarship in Rebecca's name. Every year, a student who loves literature and learning as much as she did would receive full funding for their education. Her memory would live on, helping others pursue their dreams. Rebecca, always Rebecca, the invisible thread connecting." Violet looked at this powerful man standing before her, and saw beneath the controlled exterior, to the grieving father trying desperately to hold his world together. She thought about the library and the children who needed those resources. She thought about students who would benefit from Rebecca's scholarship. She thought about her friend, who had always encouraged her to take chances and be brave. "I need time to think about this," Violet whispered. "Of course," Damien said. "Take all the time you need. But Violet, I want you to know that I chose you specifically, not just because of your connection to Rebecca, but because in the brief conversations we have had at charity events over the years, I found you to be intelligent, genuine, and kind. If I must enter into this arrangement, I want it to be with someone I respect." 3 days later, Violet called his private number and said yes. The wedding ceremony lasted exactly 14 minutes. Violet stood in a private room at City Hall, wearing a simple cream dress she had purchased the day before, holding a small bouquet of white roses that Damien's assistant had provided. There were no guests, no celebration, just two people speaking vows that felt both meaningless and terrifyingly significant. When the officiant pronounced them married, Damien leaned in and pressed his lips briefly to her cheek. The touch was formal, businesslike, yet Violet felt electricity shoot through her entire body. She told herself it was just nerves, just the surreal nature of what she had done. They signed the papers in silence. Damien's hand was steady as he wrote his name. Violet's trembled slightly, but she completed her signature. "Mrs. Violet Sterling." The name looked foreign on the page. "We should go," Damien said quietly. "I have arranged for us to spend a week at my estate on the coast. It will give us time to establish our story, learn about each other, and prepare for our first public appearance." Violet nodded, not trusting her voice. She followed him to a waiting car, a sleek black vehicle with tinted windows. The driver loaded their bags, and they pulled away from the city. The silence in the car was heavy. Violet stared out the window, watching San Francisco disappear behind them, placed by rolling hills and eventually the dramatic coastline. Damien worked on his tablet, his focus intense, occasionally taking calls in that deep, authoritative voice that made her stomach flutter in ways she did not want to examine. After 2 hours, they turned onto a private road that wound through towering trees. The estate appeared gradually, a stunning modern structure of glass and wood that seemed to emerge from the cliffs themselves. The ocean crashed against rocks far below, the sound both beautiful and slightly ominous. "This is breathtaking," Violet breathed, her first words in hours. "Rebecca loved it here," Damien said softly. She would spend entire weekends reading on the deck, listening to the waves. Pain flashed across his face, quickly controlled. Violet felt her heart squeeze. They were both here because of the person they had lost, bound together by grief and an impossible agreement. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, greeted them at the entrance. She was an elegant woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile that made Violet feel slightly less terrified. "Welcome, Mrs. Sterling," she said, and Violet tried not to flinch at the name. "Let me show you to your room." Her room was on the second floor, a beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. The bed was enormous, covered in soft white linens. There was a sitting area, a luxurious bathroom, and a walk-in closet that was already filled with clothes in her size. "Mr. Sterling had a stylist prepare some things for you," Mrs. Chen explained, "for the public appearances. If anything does not fit or suit your taste, just let me know." Violet ran her hand over a stunning silk dress, the fabric cool and expensive beneath her fingers. This was her life now, at least for 2 years. Playing dress-up as a billionaire's wife. That first evening was awkward beyond words. They ate dinner in a dining room with windows that framed the sunset, the sky turning brilliant shades of orange and pink. The food was exquisite, but Violet could barely taste it. Every clink of silverware seemed too loud. Every silence stretched too long. "Tell me about your work at the library," Damien said finally, clearly trying to ease the tension. Violet latched onto the safe topic gratefully. She talked about the programs she ran, the children she helped, her dreams for what the space could become. As she spoke, she noticed Damien actually listening, his eyes focused on her face, asking thoughtful questions. "You truly love what you do," he observed. I do, Violet said simply. Books saved me when I was young. I want to give that gift to others. Something shifted in Damien's expression. Rebecca said the same thing about you once. She said you had the biggest heart of anyone she knew. They were quiet for a moment, Rebecca's presence hovering between them like a benediction. After dinner, Damien excused himself to his study. Violet went to her room, changed into comfortable pajamas, and tried to read. But her mind kept wandering to the man working somewhere in this vast house, to the strange situation she had agreed to the way her heart had raced when he looked at her during dinner. She must have fallen asleep, because she woke suddenly to the sound of thunder so loud it shook the windows. Rain hammered against the glass with frightening intensity. The wind howled, and Violet could hear things crashing outside. She got up and went to the window. The storm was massive, turning the ocean into a churning mass of dark water and white foam. Lightning split the sky, illuminating everything in stark flashes. A knock at her door made her jump. Violet. Damien's voice came through the door, concerned. Are you all right? This storm is stronger than predicted. She opened the door. He stood there in dark sleep pants and a fitted t-shirt, his hair slightly mussed, looking more human and accessible than she had ever seen him. I am fine, she said. Just watching the storm. It is incredible and terrifying, he added. The weather service just issued a hurricane warning. We are going to lose power soon. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. As if on cue, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness broken only by lightning flashes. Perfect timing, Damien muttered. Come on, there are emergency lights downstairs, and a generator for essential systems. He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Violet took it. His palm was warm and strong, and she tried to ignore the way her skin tingled at the contact. They made their way downstairs using phone flashlights. The generator kicked in, providing dim lighting in key areas. Damien led her to a library on the first floor, a cozy space with built-in bookshelves reaching the ceiling and a massive stone fireplace. We will be more comfortable here, he said, moving to start a fire. The backup systems will keep this area warm and lit. Violet watched him work, admiring the competent way he built the fire, coaxing flames to life. When he was done, he settled into one of the leather chairs arranged near the hearth. Might as well get comfortable, he said. This storm is not going anywhere soon. Violet took the chair beside his, pulling a soft throw blanket over her legs. The fire crackled pleasantly, a stark contrast to the violence of the storm outside. Can I ask you something? Violet said softly. Anything. Why did you really choose me for this arrangement? And please do not tell me it was just because of the library or Rebecca. There had to be other options. Damien was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. When he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. Because when I saw you at Rebecca's funeral, I saw someone who understood loss the way I did. Because in the handful of times we talked at events before her death, you made me laugh, made me think, made me feel human instead of just successful. Because there is something about you, Violet Hayes, that makes me want to be better than I am. Violet's breath caught. Damie, I know this situation is bizarre and complicated, he continued. I know I am too old for you, that I was your best friend's father, that every aspect of this is unconventional. But I also know that sitting here with you feels more right than anything has in months. The confession hung in the air between them. Violet felt her heart pounding, felt something shifting inside her chest. You are not too old, she heard herself say. And Rebecca would want us both to find happiness, even if it comes in unexpected ways. Their eyes met across the firelight. The storm raged outside, but inside something else was building. A different kind of storm entirely. This was supposed to be just business, Damien said, but his voice had dropped lower. Rough, I know, Violet whispered. We should maintain boundaries. We should. Neither of them moved. Neither looked away. The night stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and danger and the promise of something neither had planned for, but both desperately wanted. The fire burned lower as the hours passed. Violet and Damien talked through the night, sharing stories about Rebecca, about their lives, about dreams and fears they had never voiced to anyone else. The storm continued its assault on the house, but inside, they had created their own world. "Tell me something you have never told anyone," Damien said, as dawn began to lighten the sky. Violet thought carefully. "I have never been in love. Not really. I have had relationships, but I always held part of myself back. I think I was waiting for something I was not sure existed." "What were you waiting for?" His voice was soft, intimate in the gray morning light. "This," Violet said simply, gesturing between them. "This feeling like I could tell someone everything and they would not run. Like I could be completely myself." Damien leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You terrify me, Violet, because I have not felt this way since my ex-wife left 15 years ago. I have built walls, kept people at a distance, told myself I was fine alone. Then you walked into my office, and every wall started crumbling. What are we doing?" Violet whispered. "Breaking all the rules," Damien said. He stood and held out his hand. "Come here." Violet took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They stood close, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "If we do this," Damien said carefully, "everything changes. This stops being a business arrangement. It becomes real." "Maybe it was always meant to be real," Violet said. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "I'm going to kiss you now. If you want me to stop, just say so." "Do not stop," Violet breathed. The kiss was nothing like the brief touch at their wedding. This was deep and searching, full of months of loneliness and grief. Finally finding connection, Violet melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt. And Damien made a sound low in his throat that sent heat flooding through her body. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me today," he murmured. "Let us pretend the outside world does not exist. Let us just be Violet and Damien, two people exploring whatever this is between us." They spent the day together in the library as the storm continued outside. They read passages from books to each other, played chess by the fire, shared meals that Mrs. Chen discreetly left outside the door. They talked and laughed and kissed, each touch building the tension between them till it felt like its own kind of storm. As evening fell, Violet found herself in Damien's arms on the sofa, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I want you," Damien said quietly. "I have wanted you since that first coffee meeting. But I need you to be sure, Violet. You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. I do not want you to do anything you might regret." Violet sat up and looked at him directly. "I am 24 years old, Damien. I know my own mind. And I want this. I want you. Not because of our arrangement. Not because of grief or loneliness. Because you make me feel alive in ways I never have before." Something broke in his careful control. He kissed her fiercely, his hands tangling in her hair. "My room," he said against her lips. "I want you in my bed properly." He led her through the house to his suite. The room was masculine and elegant, dominated by a massive bed. Damien turned to face her, giving her one last chance to change her mind. Instead, Violet reached for the hem of her shirt and pulled it over her head. What followed was both tender and passionate. Damien worshipped her body with reverence, taking his time, making sure she felt cherished. When they finally came together, Violet gasped at the intensity of it, at how perfectly they fit, how right this felt. "Look at me," Damien commanded softly. "I want to see your face." Their eyes locked as they moved together, building towards something explosive. When Violet shattered, crying out his name, Damien followed moments later, burying his face in her neck. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both trembling. "That was," Violet started, then laughed softly. "Perfect," Damien finished. "That was absolutely perfect." Over the next 3 days, as the storm gradually cleared, they stayed in their private world. They made love repeatedly, learning each other's bodies, discovering what made the other gasp and moan. They had deep conversations about building a real future together. They laughed and played, and simply enjoyed being together without pretense. When they finally emerged to face reality, everything had changed. What do we tell people? Violet asked, as they prepared to return to the city. The truth, Damien said, pulling her close. That our arrangement became something more. That I fell completely in love with my wife. I love you too, Violet said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. I think I have been falling for you since that first coffee. Their first public appearance as a couple in love was at a charity gala 2 weeks later. Violet wore a stunning red dress, and Damien could not take his eyes off her all evening. When they danced, holding each other close, the room buzzed with speculation. Let them talk, Damien whispered in her ear. Let them see how much I adore you. 6 months later, Violet stood in their penthouse bathroom, staring at a positive pregnancy test, with tears in her eyes. When she showed Damien, he lifted her into his arms, spinning her around. We are having a baby, he said, wonder in his voice. We are going to be parents. Are you happy? Violet asked, suddenly nervous. Happy does not begin to cover it, Damien said, kissing her deeply. You have given me everything, Violet. A second chance at love, at family, at life itself. Their daughter, Rebecca Grace Sterling, was born on a spring morning. When Damien held her for the first time, tears streaming down his face, he looked at Violet with such profound love that she started crying too. Our family, he whispered. Our forever, Violet agreed. Years later, with 3 children running through their home, filling it with laughter and chaos, Violet would sometimes think about that storm that had trapped them together and changed everything. She would look at Damien across the dinner table, their eyes meeting with the intimate knowledge of 2 people who had chosen each other against all odds, and feel grateful for every moment. Some love stories begin with logic and end with passion. Some marriages start as arrangements and transform into something real and lasting. And some couples, like Violet and Damien, prove that the best relationships are the ones you never saw coming. Their love was unexpected, unconventional, and absolutely unbreakable. And somewhere, Violet liked to believe, Rebecca was smiling down on them, happy that the 2 people she loved most had found each other. The end.